Welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast, a mix of both solo episodes and expert interviews. Our ideal listener is an early career, ambitious, and passionate online language services provider. She is committed to professional growth and achieving success in the fiercely competitive translation and interpreting industry. She balances multiple responsibilities with resourcefulness, values mentorship, is open to learning, and investing in her professional development journey. She embraces technology and seeks to optimize workflow, eager to connect with like-minded peers and build out her professional network. She is determined to overcome challenges and become a sought-after freelance translator. And here's your host, medical translator and translator business mentor, Jason Willis Lee.
Liz Scully is a business strategy coach, and for the last 10 years, she's run Rethink Central, coaching solopreneurial clients to triple their business. She also works with clients in small collaborative mastermind groups. Masterminds are small, supportive groups that stay together for years to achieve their goals. Working like this is so effective. She also teaches how to run masterminds well with her flagship live online course, Mastering Mastermind. She works with clients at all business stages to build clear, workable strategies to scale. When these are in place, they cut through the endless possibilities to create the one plan that has you clear, directed, and filled with momentum. And welcome to How to Find More Direct Clients, a podcast hosted by myself, Jason Willis Lee. This is the show that makes digital marketing easier and more fun using the perfect combo and just the right dose of business strategy and tech. As I said, I'm your host, Jason Willis Lee, digital marketing specialist. And today I am very thrilled to welcome film insider Liz Scully. She is a film industry insider, and Liz brings a very unique perspective to our episode today. Liz, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for accepting the invite. Can you tell us a little about your personal and your business journey, your work journey in film? I know you have a close relationship with film, and your unique vision for the future of the industry.
Sure, no pressure then. Unique vision for the industry. Okay, then. So I spent 20 years working in film visual effects on big Hollywood films.
Wow.
You know, the sort of films that the big summer blockbusters that you come out of and think, that was rubbish. And you look at each other and go, but it looked good. And it was the looking good. That's what me and my teams did. We
Give
made
us a few titles. What have you worked on?
Oh yeah, my mind has gone completely blank. So I won an Emmy for the first Dinotopia series. There was a horrible, really rubbish Dinotopia series, but there was a really beautiful one. I worked on the remake of Poseidon that got an Oscar nod. It didn't actually win due to the fact it was a terrible film. Really, truly awful film. I've worked on a lot of big space stuff. And basically, if you are over about 38 years old and you grew up in the West, then you've probably seen my work. You probably haven't been impressed by it. And if you looked at it now, because nothing ages as much as visual effects, most of those things really don't do well. But it was so much fun. We sat in the dark and we made pretty beautiful things all over the world. It's really lovely work. And what you do in film is you work very collaboratively with people who are extremely good at what they do and are paid, frankly, far too much money to be right. And my job as head of a lighting team was to keep us on track and on budget and happy with the producers and the producers happy with us and keep everyone moving. So while I was actually lighting, I was also doing continually strategy, client work, making sure I was booked for my next gig, all the stuff we do continually as both a freelancer and, of course, as an entrepreneur. So when I left the film industry, it was a sort of natural flow into business coaching because it's so similar. It sounds so different, but it's so similar.
Is film like academic research publications? Are there totally rubbish films that do extremely well and make a lot of money? And is there very good work that does extremely poorly? Because that's the case of sometimes you get wonderful articles which don't get published or get published in terrible journals with zero impact at all. And then you get very good article or very poor articles that get to Nature and get to these high prestigious journals. Is it the same in the film industry? Or
Kind of. But to be fair, if you throw money at a film, generally speaking, it improves. So if you invest a lot of cash in it, they will improve the script. They will get better actors. They will get a higher caliber of effects. So they look slightly less wooden and awful. But of course, we have all seen those really big budget, particularly the summer movie, the sort of movie that I worked on that has those big name actors that they're just popcorn movies. They're not designed to be Tolstoy. They're not meant to sort of really do more than just wow you. And for those films, what they're aiming for is to entertain you like a meal, like it's a snack rather than a big, beautiful banquet. So yes, there are a lot of films that could do better if they were given more focus, but there's an awful lot of films that just shouldn't be made, actually, just dreadful rubbish.
So let me ask you, from your experience working with film directors and now entrepreneurs, you've transitioned into business. What are the similarities and differences? What are the top strategies that both these groups use to connect with their audience or clients? Because it's essentially the same, isn't it? Audience and clients. How can we as online business owners apply these strategies to leverage more clients, do you think?
Well, the really big thing that is similar, I think, between film directors and entrepreneurs is they're always trying to please a lot of people, the clients, the customers, their staff, their team, their family, reminds them what they look like, all of that kind of long hours and long work. They've got a lot going on in their brain all the time.
Yeah.
They are managing budgets continually, and they're normally working on many things at the same time. So as a strategy coach, one of the things I have to do when I start working with people is try and get them to just work on one thing at a time. With a film director, you are always working in pre-production on something, post-production on something, and the thing you're actually filming. And most freelancers, we're doing the same thing. We are worried about the job we've just finished, making sure that's nicely ended and closed out with documents, whatever it is you need to send them, the current job you're doing, and setting up the next one. So being really clear about how you manage that, really relying on the staff around you and trusting people, hiring good people if they're your support staff, making sure that your communication is there all the time. And the thing that film directors do have to do, which I think is directly the same as entrepreneurs, is you have to be just top of mind for a lot of things. So even if it's just a social thing, even if you are just sending a Christmas card or sending a little gift for having worked with people, you want to leave a pleasant taste in the mouth about having been worked with so that they will hire you again. That great success is very helpful. Obviously, if you do a sort of Lord of the Rings type trilogy, that's great. But you also want to leave the crew going, oh, he was lovely to work with, as opposed to, yeah, they did the work and they were brilliant. But what a nightmare.
You just have to explain Evil Coach to me, because I'm getting distracted by Evil Coach and a skull with a wig just over your left shoulder. Could you just explain how Evil Coach works?
Sure. So I have two businesses. I have Rethink Central, which is my main business, which is all about masterminds. And then Evil Coach, this is a very ridiculous business. It is about teaching people strategy. Now, I don't know if you've ever actually read any strategy books, but they are dry as dust. They are so boring. And because they're so dull, strategy tends not to be taught to people. So I decided to make an interesting way to learn strategy. So what I noticed is I'm part of the BDSM kink community, just in my personal life. And I noticed that brand new entrepreneurs and brand new kinksters had very strong links between the two. That brand new entrepreneurs tend to go to I'm going to do a webinar, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to do this, I'm going to speak, they're trying to do everything all at the same time. They're not clear about their goals. They're not focused on what they achieve. They look at other people and think, oh, what are they doing? I should do what they're doing. And it's the same in the kink world. So using this ridiculous metaphor of the kink world, I discuss strategy. Now, there's nothing salacious about Evil Coach, but it allows me to get people giggling so that they will learn much more. And it is also, let's face it, just an excuse for lots of smutty innuendo, all strategy based. And frankly, there are very few places in the world where you can be smutty about strategy. So I decided to create that place. So that's
it's personal branding, isn't it? So it's a way of standing out.
Yes. But it also feels very true, to be fair.
So you're a strong advocate for mastermind groups through Rethink. I was just thinking of Rethink Press. There is an editorial through the Dent Global Consultancy called Rethink. Not sure if you've heard of that. There's an overlap there. How do you see masterminds? I love masterminds. So I'm in a couple of masterminds with
Excellent.
entrepreneurs, and the idea bouncing is incredible. It's very energizing, it's very motivating, and it's very high performer stuff. How do you see masterminds or your masterminds as a vehicle for helping solopreneurs, youpreneurs, not only grow their businesses, but also find more clients? And can you share a specific example where your mastermind has helped generate lead to high value client connections, your mastermind or another that you belong to?
Sure. So I teach people how to run masterminds, and also I run masterminds that people can join. And I think if you are a solopreneur, however you describe that, then being in a group of other people who are moving forwards at the same speed as you is really helpful. Because this running a business, it is quite hard and it can be quite isolating.
Yeah.
And your family, your friends, your loved ones, they care about what you do, but they don't necessarily understand it or, frankly, have a clue what you're doing. So they might be giving you lots of, you're doing the right thing, but are you? Like, do you know? So being in a mastermind, as you know, you can look across the mastermind and think, well, I like the tactics they're doing. And yes, I tried that. It didn't work for me, but I can give them encouragement. So you're in community with people, which I think is really helpful. But it's also a place where you can ideate and think things through. And also, crucially, sometimes we have what are slightly embarrassing questions that would make us feel like a bit of a fool if we asked them in the wrong place. In your mastermind, you can ask them very safely. You can come together and do that. And if you have experienced that, obviously you have, I think for many people, the next step is running a mastermind. Because if you help people make decisions, which most of us do, that is a big part of what we do. We help clients decide to start with to hire us. But if you help people make decisions, and you have a body of knowledge that is helpful, running a mastermind is a whole new revenue stream. And they can be both fun and super lucrative. And even if they're not hugely lucrative to you, it's just interesting to have a new way to interact with your clients, to support them. And most people in my masterminds, they stay with me for years and years and years. So there's less finding clients, there's less looking all the time, because people stay, and they stay because it works, because it's a very powerful framework.
So as a business strategist, what creative or unconventional methods, and I think we just touched on one, personal branding, BDSM, Kingster type of thing, would you recommend for solopreneurs who want to attract direct clients? Because my audience, we're very much agency centric. We have traditionally worked for middle people, middle men, middle women, middle people, and we all want to work directly with the client, where it's more gratifying, it's direct communication, it's more lucrative, you can charge higher fees. So especially those that are beginning, that are joining the industry, that may be a little uncertain about AI and the effect of tech, and are they going to survive type of thing, and don't have a large VIP network. How can they stand out in a crowded market? Can you give us a couple of personal branding tips for standing out?
So I think the important thing is you really need to, not just for your personal brand, but you need to think very deeply about what do your clients need to know to hire you. So there's a sort of education element, and lots of sales funnels and launches will talk about that. What they don't talk about so much is, what does the client need to feel? The emotional side of things. Obviously they need to trust you, they need to feel safe in that space, and they need to be sure that you can do the work. So what exactly in your world is going to give them that space? So personal brand, obviously, could be as extreme as Evil Coach, but I'm also building around everything I do, a sort of learning ecosystem that is both the education the client needs and enough testimonials, enough support, enough information, so that they also feel emotionally safe that I can get them the results they want. So I think as you build your brand, think about that ecosystem really carefully. What learning path do you need? And as you create that, I think one of the absolute best things to do is to spend time on podcasts. Be a guest. You don't actually have to run it yourself. Being a guest on a podcast works in many levels. I like any strategy to stack up in many ways. So one of the ways I like it with a podcast is obviously I'm meeting you today. That's nice. So we're meeting new people. Potentially your listeners might think interesting. So the listeners are there. But also I could be testing out new ideas. I could be testing out new positioning and languaging. And then of course there's all the useful social media stuff you can do with something afterwards. So you can have all of the benefits of a podcast just by being a guest. And I think that's the big thing. As you develop your ideas, you can test them on all sorts of people and also just hear yourself, see if it sounds like, well, that sounds quite interesting. Yes, I like to do this. Because sometimes when we start talking about a new thing, that energy of this sounds great and I'm so happy I do this. I love what I do. And hopefully that comes across. But that will also, having had this interview, will spill into the rest of my day because I like what I do.
That's very interesting. I mean, I was just thinking of going back to it. So I am starting as a podcast host. I'm the platform I met you on. I'm a host. I will eventually be a guest, probably sooner rather than later. Somebody said I could already be a guest.
Yeah, do it now.
So why not do it now? Why wait? I just thought I'd cut my teeth as a host, see how this works. Let's go back to film because we were just chatting as before we hit record, and I told you I'd seen a platform, I'd seen a tool from Google. It's called Notebook LM, and the tool could actually curate a podcast episode between you and me. If we plug in the voices and the content, it could actually curate an episode that could potentially put the platform we've met on out of business. And I was thinking about, we were talking about voice licensing and how people do that, how actors do that. And I was thinking of one of the films I love. I love the trilogy Back to the Future. And I recently discovered that the George McFly character, Crispin Glover, sued Steven Spielberg, the director, and the producers for copyright breach when they pasted his image or real footage into films 2 and 3. And he wasn't actually in those films. They used other actors. So we got into a conversation about the sort of, the limits of AI and just how gray that area is, the legal limits. I mean, just going back to film, could you tell us any anecdotes about where those boundaries were blurred, perhaps in your professional career? Did you see actors getting into conflicts, or was there copyright infringement, or were directors cutting corners, as Spielberg obviously tried to do, or he tried to fool the audience into thinking Crispin Glover was in films 2 and 3 when he clearly wasn't? And if you remember those George McFly scenes, he was either upside down and very distant, and you couldn't, he sort of disappeared from the films 2 and 3, which was a shame because I thought he was one of the central characters. I loved his performance in film 1. He's obviously a very talented actor, very eccentric perhaps. So the long sort of monologue there, just dipping into my personal branding, which is to tell people I like Back to the Future. I love Indiana Jones. I love Star Wars. I did a webinar yesterday and had a picture of the Falcon. And I said, we need to make over your mindsets and take your mindset into warp speed, just like the Falcon here. And there's a picture of Han Solo and Chewie taking off in the Falcon. That's personal branding. That's my way of getting my personality into my things. And I teach people to get their hobbies because that's what makes us stand out, right?
Absolutely.
And there's not going to be another medical translator doing a bit of coaching on the side who likes these things, or it's unlikely. So I guess the question was, could you give us some anecdotes from your film career where you've seen the sort of gray areas and directors cutting corners, perhaps actors getting a bit shirty over these copyright breaches, and I should be paid for that and I wasn't, and that kind of thing? Is there any sort of anecdote?
First of all, I would say I don't think Spielberg was trying to trick anyone. It is an absolute standard editing tack to just go back and use some footage you already have. Simple as that. So till the law is clarified, which is what obviously happens with that trademark thing, but it's also what happens with the writers' strike. The natural state of this is for the big companies, the studios, the tech monsters, for those people to grab as much as possible. And then we have to claw it back from there. But I don't think Spielberg is doing anything other than you would do if you had an establishing shot of the White House and you shoot on one day. You would use that footage all the way through, potentially all of the films you had, because you own it, because you shot it. But once you have an actor in the frame, obviously there are different rights, there are residuals. Now, over the years, those residual payments for every time the film is shown and people get a little bit of payment for it, those have been very reduced. And they used to be quite large. I have a friend who was in a Varnish advert sometime in the 1980s, and it played forever, for years, decades. And you didn't even really see her. You saw her sort of walk up some stairs, but she got a tiny little payment every time it was on the telly. And it was on the telly for 25 years. It was a Ron Seal commercial, if you remember those. And it was just there for years. And she bought her house on that. Now, these days, they would do a buyout. When I have talent in any of my videos, other than myself, of course, then I just give them a flat fee. This is what I'm paying you. It's a complete buyout. Sign here. So I think we need to be very careful about what rights are being violated. First, we need to be clear. And the Notebook LM thing, that terrifies me, because once they've absorbed your voice into their system, what are they could have us saying anything at that point. So be careful about what you sign away. Be careful how it fits together, and look at the small print. You don't want anything in perpetuity. You don't want anything that is just going to take away those rights completely.
One of the scams, sorry to interrupt, one of the financial scams in Spain consists of calling you up and trying to get you to say sí, yes. So I never say yes when I answer the phone. I'll always say something like dígame, or pronto in Italian. And that is to get to sort of paste the yes into a financial chat where you're, giving away some kind of bank data or agreeing to something financial. So that's a scam. So I think that has big implications, what you just said. And that's a very interesting point. Yeah, I mean, I think I love Spielberg, obviously. I mean, most of the films I love have been directed by him. So my childhood would have been very, very different without him. So that's just a very interesting thing. We'll see how podcasting turns out. I mean, I have this podcast. I repurpose the video for a YouTube channel. And I get, I've had about 4,000 downloads, and it's increasing as I build out what is a micro community. I don't monetize it. I use it just for brand recognition and to help, to serve my community, in addition to my coaching offer. Let's go into a few final 5 questions. I have a final 5 section. We ask all our guests this. I sort of copied a famous podcast host, I can't remember his name, Jay Shetty, I think, does this, the final 5. So I'm pretty big on productivity. I'm a bit of a productivity geek, a feel-good productivity geek. I like people to feel joy from their work and productive, and not get the Sunday scaries and have work that passes what I call the Monday morning test. Is there a productivity tool you use, or a tip in your work that you leverage to get more productive or feel happier at work, or feel good productivity, joy when you're working?
One of the things I get my clients to do every week as we start working together is to look at their calendar for the coming week and delete something, remove something from it.
That's good.
Because there's normally something that you can either just not do completely, or you can delegate, or you can reschedule, or you can repurpose in some way. We are all doing too much. I have chronic fatigue, and I have learned how to make each step as effective as possible, and doing less and for each thing to be more effective is the number one.
So less is more.
Always.
Yeah, that's amazing. I like that. What's the biggest myth? I also like myth busting. Whenever I'm giving out, I always bust a myth. So yesterday, what my myth was, the myth was, I think the example I used was a good product or service is enough, and you don't need an online presence to sell it. And I just destroyed that, I think, because somebody quite influential in my industry said, no, you don't need, my clients don't find you through online. Absolute nonsense. People do online research. There are 3 or 4 competitors, and they will pick one based on your online presence, and that leads to trust, credibility, authority. So what is one myth that you can bust when it comes to visual effects? What is one myth that we all think, this is maybe all AI and maybe all electronic? I mean, I know nothing about visual effects, but you obviously know a lot. What is one myth that you feel people believe one thing and it's actually another? So I'm some kind of contrarian view or a polarizing view.
Well, the thing I hear all the time is actually there's 2. Can I have 2?
Yeah, of course. Oh, absolutely. You have 3 if you want.
So first of all, just a pet peeve, like, it is called in the industry CG, like computer graphics, but it is called by everyone else CGI, computer graphic images. And we don't call graphics, like 2D graphics, we don't call them GI, do we? It just annoys me. Every time I see it, it's like, it's just
yes.
So first of all, I worked in 3D, which is what you would call CGI, annoying, right? So don't do that. You will annoy people. But the thing that everybody says is, oh, they just did it in CGI. It was really easy. Now, having spoken as someone who spent 18 hours a day for 7 days a week for 2 sodding years making it happen, it is not easy. It does not happen at the touch of a button. We all work incredibly hard. And people are like, oh yeah, it's just done an AI. No, it isn't. It is hard. It is difficult. Every step of the way is really difficult. One of the talks I'm doing regularly at the moment is just showing a very anonymous shot in a film and describing the 700 or 800 people that have touched that shot in one way or another. So yeah, if it looks good, it wasn't easy.
What's the best business advice you've ever received or perhaps given one of your clients as a business strategist? What's the best advice you've given?
Well, you know, this is a cliche, but it's very true, which is build your newsletter. However many people you have on the list, you know, that old saw of the money's in the list. Yeah, that's true. And also, you will regret not starting your newsletter earlier. Whenever you start,
I do teach email list building, and I do have an email list, just under 4 figures, which is pretty good. You know, not too bad. I agree with that. I think the money, when I launch something, I usually go to my list first, because they're the people who've said, you know, send me, I'm happy to read a weekly email from you. Using just one word only, how would you describe AI? What does AI mean to you in one word? Just what's the first word that comes into your head?
Assistant.
Aha. That's a good one. Assistant. Yeah. Free salesperson, maybe. I see ChatGPT as a bit of a free employee, really. Somebody I'm leveraging but not really paying. What's the best investment you've ever made? What's the best investment, financial investment or business investment?
When I was in Chicago, when I was about 19 years old, actually maybe a little older, 21, I did a round the world trip and ended up working in Los Angeles, which was my plan. But on the way, I stopped in Chicago, and there is the Architects Association there. They do free walking tours. Well, they're not free, you have to pay. And I paid $7 for the Mies van der Rohe walking tour. And they take you, it's 2 hours long, and they take you inside buildings that you would never go into and sort of up to the 13th floor and look at this amazing thing. And then they walk you down by the canalways. So that $7 was the best $7 I ever spent. I saw art, I saw Chicago, I saw some of the most famous buildings in the world, and I sneaked into trading floors. It was amazing.
Who was mayor of Chicago at that time? Was it Richard Daley or his son? When the Daley family very influential? I can't remember.
I'm afraid that Chicago politics I know nothing about, but I could do an impromptu talk about their architecture.
That's fantastic. Can I ask you the reason you transitioned from visual effects to business strategy? You talked about the overlap between them. What was the big why, the sort of, you know, Simon Sinek thing? What was the big why behind your transition?
Well, I joke that it's because I heard of these things called weekends and I wanted one. But to be honest, it's not a joke. I just worked so hard, and I'm not a quick learner. I had not 1, but 2 small organs removed because I worked myself into the hospital. Wow. And I actually sat down and thought, I'm running out of spare parts here. I need to leave this industry. Much as I love it, I need some time off. And that's part of why the work I do with my clients, a lot of it is about getting in balance, because you just don't want to work yourself into the ground. It's not healthy, and you will pay for it.
That's very relevant. Next month, I'm going to a long haul leader summit in Cambridge. So I'll fly into Stansted, not far from where you are now. You're in London. And I will attend an event whose theme is anti-burnout. It's about business owners who burn out. So I'm looking forward to that event and mingling with some people and talking about what you just said, work-life balance. Okay, let's move into the closing thoughts. Any final thought or key message, key takeaway for my audience? Remember, my audience are online language service providers. They're translators, they're interpreters. There could be some copywriters amongst us. Who knows? There may even be a graphic designer. I don't think there are any visual effects specialists, but you never know. Any key message for them or key takeaway?
Look after your community, your people, your list, whoever it is. Any time spent nurturing them, whether it's a few extra emails or some personal emails alongside your newsletters, is time well spent, because people buy from other people. And it's great to have a list, and it's great to have a funnel, and it's great to do all of that stuff. But the important thing is people buy from other humans. So be human about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about a P2P strategy, people to people, as you very rightly said. People still want to do business with people. When you call a company, you don't want a bot. You want to talk to a human about the company. So totally agree with that. Where can my listeners connect with you, Liz, to talk about anything you've discussed on this episode, learn more about your work and your expertise? Where's the best place to connect?
Well, I've made your listeners a secret page on my main website. So if they go to rethinkcentral.com/translator, they will get a little pack of goodies, and they don't even have to opt in. There's some PDFs about masterminds. There's some videos. They could opt in if they'd like to, but you can just sort of check it all out before you hand over your email address.
That's very kind of you. We'll make sure that gets in the show notes. rethinkcentral.com/translator. We'll get a link to that in the show notes. All right, let's wrap it up for today's episode of How to Find More Direct Clients. Make sure you stay tuned for more engaging and interactive discussions with guests as interesting as Liz Scully was today on the ever-evolving landscape of language and digital marketing. Until next time, stay in your game and future-proof your career in the AI era. Thank you from me, and thank you again to my special guest, Liz Scully.
Thank you.
Here's a fun fact about Jason. Jason was a professional chorister in a symphonic choir in Spain for a few seasons. A chorister you can think of like a lyrical baritone. Thanks for tuning in to the How to Find More Direct Clients Than You Can Poke a Stick At podcast. We'll be back soon. In the meantime, why not head over to www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com to access all our tools and resources to monetize and future-proof your freelance translation business. And don't forget to hit the plus button in Apple Podcasts or iTunes, or subscribe in Spotify to be notified when new episodes drop. For regular tips and insights, business strategy, or marketing techniques straight to your inbox, please sign up at www.entrepreneurialtranslator.com.